All right, so these next ones that we're going to go over are the 1.5 multi-step constructions. Now you'll notice congruent segments. That one we already discussed because these are your basic constructions. Okay, so this is a basic along with this one. So if you want to see how to do those, you're going to watch the basic constructions video. Constructing a congruent angle, these are also your basic constructions. Okay, remember whenever you're constructing something new, like a congruent segment or a congruent angle, we always start with a ray. Okay, on the back side, the perpendicular bisectors. These are your basic constructions. So you can watch that video to see your perpendicular bisectors. Angle bisectors are also your basic constructions. So I'm not going to go through those, but I am going to go through how to use these 4 basic constructions to do the multi-step construction. So the next one says congruent segment. Construct a triangle that has 2 sides congruent to segment AB, but you cannot use the original segment in your triangle here. So you can do this one of 2 ways. You can start with the side that is not congruent to AB. So maybe it would look like this. Maybe you want to have this be your side. Okay, so maybe that will be my non-AB side. My other 2 sides are going to have to be this length. Okay, so that means off of this point right here, I need a length of AB. So I'm going to measure AB. I'm going to use my compass to measure it. I'm going to mark that arc so I know I measured it. Coming off of this point, somewhere on this arc will be the 3rd point to my triangle. Okay, because anywhere on that arc is the distance from this point to anywhere on this arc is the same distance as from A to B. Okay, now I'm going to do that exact same distance. So again, you're measuring A to B, which is still in my compass. Now I'm going to go, I did it from this point. Now I'm going to do it from this point, because from this point, I also want that distance between A and B. Now you'll see that these 2 arcs actually intersect right here. And so that would be the 3rd point of your triangle. So from this point here, that's the same thing as AB. And from this point to that arc also where they intersect is that same distance. Okay, so that would be one option. The other option is you can start with a ray, because we're going to construct a congruent segment. So you're going to start with a ray. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure this arc. We're going to copy that distance down here. And we know that this segment right here is congruent to segment AB. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, these are 2 points of your triangle. So now we're going to have to figure out a 3rd point of your triangle. We're going to need another side though. So you can draw a second ray. And on this ray, we're also going to measure that same distance, which I believe my compass is still set up. Yep. So I'm going to put my point on that beginning of that ray. And I know this segment there is also that distance of AB. So now I need to make it into a triangle. So that would be my triangle. So either way, you can highlight the triangle so that way maybe you can see it a little bit better. The triangle is made up of 3 sides. That could be it, or this could be it. Doesn't matter which one you do for a triangle with 2 congruent sides. Okay. A congruent segment, okay, so that XY is the same length as if I were to take the distance of AB and add CD to it. You're going to need a pretty long ray here, because we're going to construct a segment. Whenever we're constructing something new, we always need a ray. So I'm going to make a pretty long ray. So there's my ray. I'm going to take this first segment, make an arc. I'm going to measure that segment onto here. Again, make your arcs nice and large so you can tell that they were made with a compass. And this distance is the same as this distance here. Now we're going to add CD onto that. Okay, so I'm going to add CD. I'm going to figure out how long is CD. Okay, it's not going to work with the inside one, so I'm going to have to use the outside one this time. And that wasn't quite to the point. There we go. So there's the distance CD. Now I'm adding on to it, so I'm going to start where I ended. And I used the outside hole, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to mark it down here. So from this point to this point is going to be x, y, because it tells me to construct a segment xy, so I labeled it xy, where xy is the distance between A and B and C and D added together. So the segment that I made goes from x to y. Number 11 says to construct an angle congruent to angle B. Now this is a basic construction, so I'm not going to do this one, but you could go back and you could watch the basic constructions video to watch that congruent angle again. Now the reason why I put that as number 11 though, is because number 12 is to construct a congruent angle, but this time we want angle D, so we're going to make an angle D. Again, whenever you're starting something new, you're going to start with a ray, and my vertex is going to be angle D, so I'm going to actually label that point D. And I want it to be twice the measure of angle C. So it doesn't mean twice as long, because I can add to these rays and make these rays appear twice as long. Rays don't actually have size because they go on forever. That is not twice an angle, okay? Twice an angle means to be opened up twice as far. So like this was going to be twice the angle if that's where that ray was instead. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with an arc. So there's my arc. I'm going to copy that arc. I'm going to make it larger than this one because I know it's going to be quite a bit larger. Okay? Now, if I measure this arc here and where that's hitting, okay, and come over here. This is how you measure a congruent angle. Now, I could connect this to here, and that would be the same as angle C. But I need it to be twice as big, so not only am I going to go up once, I'm going to copy that angle again along that arc and go up a second time. Now that angle is twice as large as angle C. Okay. The next one is constructing a segment XY so that it is these three smaller segments added together. This is very similar to one we did with 2, except for you're going to be adding more segments. So you need to start with a really long ray. I'm going to label my starting point X. You're going to copy C to D. C to D. And I copied that one, so I'm going to mark it, that that's congruent to that. The next one I'm going to put on there is the EF. And I'm going to copy it on here. And I'm going to put a different congruent mark on that one. And I'm going to copy LN. And copy it down here. And I'm going to use another congruent mark. So that one I'm going to use 3 dashes. Now where it ends, that must be Y, because X to Y are those 3 segments added together. Number 14 is very similar to the one we did that was twice the angle measure. We're going to create an angle A that is 3 times the measure of angle B. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a ray. Notice most of these you always start with a ray. This one's going to be A right here because we're coming up with the measure of angle A, which is 3 times the measure of angle B. So start with your arc over here. and we're going to copy the arc onto here. And again, you're going to make it quite a bit larger because we know that we're going to have to measure this, but 3 times along it. Oops. So we're going to measure from this point down here to that point up there on that arc. And then what we're going to do is we are going to copy that measurement down here. We did it once. We're going to go to where that intersection is and copy it a second time. That would be twice the angle measure. I'm going to go to where that intersection is. I'm going to copy it a 3rd time. And where that 3rd intersection is, that's where my ray is going to be placed. And there's angle A, which is 3 times the measure of angle B. All right, the back page is where many people struggled. Constructing a 45-degree angle, you first need to construct a 90-degree angle, and then from there bisect it. If you construct a 90-degree angle, okay, a right angle, then bisect it, would be cutting it in half. So half of 90 is 45. So in order to construct a 90-degree angle, the basic construction that we have 4 basic constructions: congruent segments, congruent angles, perpendicular bisectors, and angle bisectors. Okay? If you're coming up with something new, we have nothing to copy right here. So neither of those basic constructions are going to help us. We don't have an angle to bisect. That means we have to do a perpendicular bisector. And then that would create a perpendicular, which is 90 degrees. So if I just start with a segment, doesn't matter the size of your segment. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a perpendicular bisector here. And when I do that perpendicular bisector, what it's going to create is a line that's perpendicular to it. So now what I've done is I have created a 90-degree angle. Okay? Now that I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create these rays to be a little bit longer, just because that's going to help me. I'm going to make a mark there. And so we have this 90-degree angle here. Right? And what we're going to do is we are going to bisect it, because then that will create a 45-degree angle. So to bisect it, you're going to put your compass on the vertex, and you have to make an arc. And you have to notice where those 2 marks are going to be at now. Okay? And then what we do is, remember, we make that loop-de-loop from those. And then from there, we can see the ray that is going to bisect that angle. So actually, the angle that is 45 degrees is made by this ray here and this ray here. So that angle right here is 45 degrees. Actually, this one's also 45 degrees, so it doesn't matter which one you actually highlight, because both of those angles, that angle was cut in half, so each half is 45 degrees. Okay. Constructing an equilateral triangle is very similar to the one we did before, where 2 sides had to be congruent to the segment given. So we're going to have to start with a ray, because we know we're going to have to construct a congruent segment. So start with a ray. We need this segment to be the same length as QR. So we're going to copy QR onto this segment. Okay, now I know that this segment and that segment are congruent. Okay, that means that these are 2 points of my triangle and I have to find the third point. And that third point has to be that same distance away. So from this point, it has to fall somewhere on that arc there. And from this point, it has to fall somewhere on that arc. So that third point in my triangle is going to be right here, which is the same distance away from that point as that point. Both of them are the same distance away. So that is an equilateral triangle because all 3 sides are the same. We're going to do the square, and we're going to actually use numbers 15 and 16 to construct a square, because the first thing that we need is a right angle. A square has a right angle. So we're going to start with a segment, and I'm going to construct the perpendicular bisector here. Sometimes you have to readjust your hands to go around, so be careful with that. Okay. So this is a right angle. So that means this right here is going to be a corner to my square. Now that I have that right angle, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extend this segment here, and I'm going to extend so that way those are rays. Okay, because now this is a ray, and what I can do is I can copy this segment onto that ray, because I know that if this is a corner, the next corner has to be that far away. So this intersection here is going to be another corner of my square. And I still have it measured on my compass. So I'm also going to measure up this ray. And that's going to be the third corner of my square. Now the last thing I need to do is find that fourth and final point of my square. I know it's going to be this far from that point, and it's going to be the same distance from this point. So this right here is going to be the fourth point of my square, because I had to be QR distance from this point and from this point, and where those intersect tell you where that fourth point is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use a different color to highlight this square so you can see it. So that's your square, and QR is the same distance as all the sides on your square. And that's your multi-step constructions.